15 years ago, I had a fling with a gorgeous man. And then I bolted. 15 years later, my son scored first in the royal exams. But he turned down the royal arranged marriage, so the emperor had him thrown into the dungeon. When I got the news, I rushed all the way to the royal capital. I rang the bell of justice. In the royal court, I prostrated myself before the emperor on his throne. This humble woman, Madame Nora, pays her respects to your majesty. After a long while, a voice, stern and imposing, finally echoed down from above.
Look up.
The moment I looked up, I immediately lowered my head again in a panic.
Look up. That's an order.
My shoulders trembling, I timidly raised my head. His gaze was fixed directly on me, his tone was flat.
15 years. I thought you were dead.
The others in the great hall had quietly withdrawn. I bit my lip. Your majesty, you've got the wrong person. He slowly descended the marble steps.
Even if you were reduced to ashes, I'd still recognize you.
I tightly clenched the hem of my clothes. I've never met your majesty before. Today, I rang the bell only to beg for your majesty's mercy. To spare the life of my child, Leo. The emperor's already unpleasant expression suddenly stiffened. He said coldly,
Leo, he openly defied my decree. How dare he make me swallow that insult?
I leaned forward and pressed my forehead heavily against the marble floor. Your majesty may not be aware, but my son Leo is already betrothed. He never meant to defy your decree. He just can't be that heartless traitor, who, for his own future, abandons his wife back in the countryside. The emperor scoffed lightly.
So, he can't be a heartless traitor? Then what about you? You were the one who abandoned me.
I was stunned for a moment. I looked up, speechless. Forgive my ignorance, but I don't understand what your majesty means. A mocking smile played on his lips.
You don't understand? Then why did you change your name, and hide in the middle of nowhere, so I could never find you?
He bent down and gripped my chin. Gritting his teeth.
Didn't I treat you well? Clara.
The name Clara he uttered with heavy emphasis, as if he utterly despised that person. But why me? 15 years ago, I was in the market, hawking flowers for sale. I suddenly saw an incredibly wealthy and handsome young man. So I went right up to him. Sir, would you like to buy a bouquet? The young man gave me a disdainful glance.
Get out of here.
When you're in sales, you gotta have thick skin. I wasn't even annoyed by the insult. I just grinned and kept going. Buy a bouquet, sir, for your sweetheart. I pointed at the fresh flowers in my basket, selling them hard. See? These white roses are lovely. They mean purity and beauty. Perfect for your sweetheart. And then the lilies. I didn't even notice the darkening look in his eyes. I just kept on with my sales pitch. Times were tough, you know. I'd finally snagged a rich young master. No way I was letting him go. Even after all I said, the young man remained unmoved. He just stared at me coldly. His gaze was so cold, like he could skin me alive. I swallowed hard. Fine. Don't want any. Your loss. That evening, after selling all my flowers, I was walking home when someone knocked me out cold. When I came to, I found myself lying on a mahogany bed. Rubbing the back of my head, I scrambled to my feet. The door creaked open from the outside. It was that same young man. But he was completely wasted. Muttering to himself,
Milady. Mother. Why?
I thought, that must be his sweetheart's name. He was staggering. I was afraid he'd fall. I jumped off the bed and grabbed his arm to steady him. Hey. Hey. Snap out of it. What are you doing here? He slowly looked up. Still half drunk, he toyed with a strand of my hair.
You're that flower seller.
I pushed away his violating hand. Yes. You didn't answer me. What are you doing here? His lips curved into a handsome smile.
Fine. Then I'll give you what you wanted.
The next moment, he grabbed my wrist, scooped me up by the waist, and quickly threw me onto the bed. Then he pinned me down beneath him. I was terrified, kicking and flailing wildly. But I was no match for him. He quickly subdued me, pinning both my hands above my head with one hand. He looked down at me indifferently. Playing hard to get, I struggled desperately. What did you say? Let me go. He'd had enough talking. He leaned down and stole the very breath from me. A storm of kisses rained down on me. The more I struggled, the more excited he became. It felt like an eternity passed before he finally let me go. He lay beside me, looking satisfied. I turned my back to him. Clutching the sheets, I trembled and couldn't stop crying. He had the nerve to pat my back.
What's with the tears? Weren't you sent by Mother to see if I'm a real man or not? Well, now, you can go back to the capital and report. There's nothing wrong with me. Stop with these ridiculous schemes.
His words made no sense to me. I sniffled and turned to glare at him. You monster. What sent by Mother? I was knocked out and brought here. He froze for a second. Then he got up and threw on some clothes. He kicked the door open and stormed out. When he returned, his handsome face was covered in a frosty expression. His dark eyes swept over me. While he was out, I'd had time to think things through. No matter what the misunderstanding is, he forced himself on me against my will. That's a crime. Even if word gets out, and I can never marry again, I'll make him pay for what he did. I took a deep breath. I met his gaze. I'm calling the guards. He assaulted an innocent woman. They'll arrest him for this. He looked at me like I'd just told the world's funniest joke.
You want to call the guards?
He moved closer. A wicked smile played at the corner of his eye.
Do you even know who I am?
I shrank back. I pressed my back into the corner. I stared at him warily. Whoever you are, you can't just assault an innocent woman. He reached out and yanked me hard, dragging me right into his arms. His eyes darkened. He smiled wickedly.
I wasn't sure what to do with you until just now. But now, I know.
My face smashed against his solid chest. His body was still burning hot. My cheeks burned again. I didn't know if it was from anger or shame. He held me, pinning me, so I couldn't move an inch. In a fit of rage, I slammed my head into his forehead. He was faster. His calloused palm shot up to block my forehead.
Feisty, aren't you?
My head snapped back. Then, to my shame, the tears started falling again. He wiped the tears from my cheeks with no tenderness at all.
Stop crying. I didn't say I wouldn't take responsibility.
I slapped his hand away. Shaking with rage, I don't want you to take responsibility. I don't want it. I'm going to call the guards, and have you thrown in the dungeon. He let go of me, straightened up, amused.
In all the realm, no one has ever dared to throw me in the dungeon.
With that, he swept out with long strides, sleeves billowing. At the door, he ordered the guards to keep an eye on me. Not long after, several maids entered, carrying clothes and water in a line. I curled up, tensed up, and leaned numbly against the headboard. I listened as they poured bucket after bucket of steaming water splash into the bathtub. The one with the clothes put them down, then cautiously approached me.
Miss, I'm here to help you bathe.
She reached out to help me up. I looked at her and asked, "Where is this? Who was that man?" Daisy replied respectfully,
This is the Duke's estate. His Highness ordered us to attend to you.
I frowned slightly. So that was the Duke. Daisy nodded gently. I stroked my chin, muttering to myself, the Duke. The Northlands only has one devil incarnate. My eyes flew open. I grabbed Daisy's hand to confirm. Is he the one who came to the Northlands at 10, and by 14, sent the barbarians packing overnight and fleeing back to the steppes? That devil incarnate? Daisy nodded gently again. He's not just a valiant young duke, he's a ruthless killer, a name to silence crying children at night. The devil incarnate who rules the Northlands with an iron fist. But isn't there a rumor that he lost his manhood on the battlefield? That he's impotent, but he clearly. He said I was sent by his mother. So he was drunk and mistook me. He thought I was sent by his mother to test if he's fully functional. I suddenly remembered the icy gaze he fixed on me when he returned. After realizing his mistake, was he thinking of how to silence me? Which bastard knocked me out and dumped me in his room? That night, I don't know how I got through that night. When I woke the next day, I had only one thought. I won't call the guards, I just need to stay alive. I argued with the guards for what felt like ages. I need to see the Duke. Please let me out. But they didn't budge. They stood like wooden stakes, and said expressionlessly, when His Highness is finished, he will summon you. I was fuming, wanting to smash something. I picked up a vase, but then I noticed the relief carving on it of a magnificent mythical bird. The glaze shimmered with color. I quietly put it back. Way too pricey, I could never afford it. Finally, as the sun was setting, the Duke arrived. The moment he stepped inside, Daisy immediately served him hot tea. He picked up the teacup, leisurely using the lid to skim off the tea leaves.
Speak. What is it?
He took a sip of tea. He lifted his eyelids slightly, and glanced at me indifferently. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Your Highness, I've decided not to call the guards after all. Just let me go, and we'll pretend last night never happened. His hand paused as he set the cup down. Then, he gently placed it on the table. His fingers traced the rim of the teacup. After a long moment, he let out a soft, mocking laugh.
I've never met anyone who dared to bargain with me.
Peasants can't fight the nobles, you know. Because they can't win. Especially not against a duke. I know my place, so I threw myself to the floor, banging my head hard against the polished wood. After 3 deep bows, I looked up at him. Your Highness, I wouldn't dare make demands. I only beg you to spare my life. Please forget what happened last night. Treat it as just a dream. How pathetic is that? He's the one who violated me. And now I'm the one begging him to forget. Are our lives as commoners really as worthless as weeds? Tears welled up again, betraying me as they fell. His shoulders shook slightly. He suddenly burst out laughing. He laughed until he was breathless. When he finished, he reached out a hand, and pulled me from the floor and into his lap. Once he had me secured, he said with a smile,
"Seems I'll have to call on a madam to teach you some manners."
I was stuck in this awkward position, perched right on his lap. I couldn't escape, and I couldn't hide. Furious, I became outspoken. "Do you have to get so handsy all the time? You took my innocence. And I haven't even made you pay for that. I've already backed down more than enough. I know you're of high status. I can't fight you. So I don't plan to. All I'm asking is that you spare my life, and let me go home." The amusement in his eyes grew deeper. His hands started to wander. He pinched my chin.
"Let you go home? You're mine now. Forget about going back to that rundown shack of yours. Clara."
I couldn't help but frown. Hearing what he said next, I just stared at him in disbelief. He actually knew my real name. It hit me then, he must have looked into my past. I was an orphan girl. My parents passed away early. Relying on the little plot of land they left me, and the help of my neighbors, I grew and sold flowers to scrape by. Life was tough, but I've always been a cheerful person. I always believed that as long as I was alive, there was no obstacle I couldn't overcome. Even after losing my innocence, I never once thought of ending it all. All I wanted was to call the guards and get justice. If that didn't work, I'd just keep my head down and live my life. After all, I was only 15 at the time. I still had a long life ahead of me. The next day, an old woman named Mrs. Hudson was sent by Duke Julian to teach me the estate rules. She told me haughtily,
If you please His Highness, you might even earn the title of high-ranking mistress someday.
I had no idea what she meant. Not until Daisy explained did I get it. A high-ranking mistress was just a fancy title for a concubine that just made me even more determined to resist.
It just made me even more resistant.
All those rules of propriety Mrs. Hudson kept drilling into me just left my head spinning. I couldn't understand a word of it. And she even took a ruler and gave me a dozen or so vicious whacks right on the palms. That's when I realized being your highness's mistress was no walk in the park. Julian happened to catch me crying over my swollen, red palms. I pleaded with him right away not to have Mrs. Hudson force any more rules on me, and I didn't want to be his mistress either. But his face darkened. He said I still hadn't learned enough rules for the day. I was afraid of angering him, so I had to bite my tongue. I complained that I couldn't even read the books, so how could I possibly learn all those rigid rules? He stared at me for a long time. Then a mischievous glint appeared in his eyes. He gave me an ultimatum: be his mistress or keep learning the rules. I thought it over. In the end, I quietly chose the first option. But when I actually got into his bed, I immediately regretted it. Julian was no man. He was a ravenous wolf. He had no restraint in bed. He made me study all sorts of erotic books all night long, so I couldn't even get out of bed the next day. To make matters worse, I still had to learn all the rules. Mrs. Hudson stayed by my side all day. If I slipped up even a little in my words or actions, if I so much as put a foot wrong, she'd give me an earful. I was absolutely miserable, but there was nothing I could do. Lady Victoria, back in the royal capital, heard that Julian had finally taken a liking to women and was in good health. She immediately picked 7 or 8 beauties and sent them to the Northlands. I saw my chance and suggested to Julian that he should go study those art books with those beauties and stop pestering me. But the moment I said that, his face went cold. He flicked my forehead and said firmly, no. He even shot back, asking if I thought he was some guy who'd sleep with any woman he saw. He threatened that if I ever said such a thing again, he'd show me what true lack of restraint really means. I rolled my eyes inwardly and didn't dare say another word. Who knew that the very next day, Daisy told me Julian had already given away all the beauties Lady Victoria sent to his subordinates as rewards. When the news spread, everyone in the estate said I was the one who had the Duke's heart. I might even become the Duchess someday, breaking all precedent. I didn't pay any attention to these rumors. I was just secretly worried that without those beauties to share the burden, my days would be even harder to bear. Not long after, the one who truly had Julian's heart was coming to the Northlands for a visit. Her father, Lord Sterling, was Julian's right-hand man in the Northlands. Years ago, at Lady Victoria's request, he assisted Julian in governing the Northlands and securing the borders. After Penelope arrived, Julian really did stop coming to see me as much. I should have been happy, but I felt strangely empty inside, like I'd lost something really important. One day, I was just staring at the peony that Julian had specially found for me. A sweet but hostile voice cut right through my thoughts. It was Penelope. She was stunningly beautiful, but she held her chin high and sneered at me for using my body to get ahead. I calmly accepted her so-called compliment, which only pissed her off even more. She made a threat, saying Lady Victoria had pressured her father to quietly get rid of me. Then she left, laughing. After Penelope left, I looked at Mrs. Hudson beside me. Her face was grim. After a long while, she sighed softly. She told me not to listen to Penelope and that His Highness would find a way to keep me safe. But I was full of doubts. I'd never even met Lady Victoria, nor had I ever offended her. Why was she so determined to get rid of me? Mrs. Hudson couldn't answer my questions, so I decided to go find Julian myself, and get some answers. I hear the barbarians on the steppes are getting antsy lately, planning to invade Eldoria again. Julian's been up to his ears in work. I went out of my way to make some pastries. I brought them over in a picnic basket to the grand hall, but I got stopped at the entrance by the attendant Thomas. He told me to wait in the side hall. I sat and waited there for a long time, but Julian never showed up. Instead, Lord Sterling showed up. He got straight to the point, said Lady Victoria doesn't want me staying at the Duke's estate any longer. His Highness can't go against his mother's wishes. Told me to take the gold coins and leave. Just looking at that pouch of gold coins on the table, my heart sank. I had to ask, why didn't he come and tell me himself? Lord Sterling raised an eyebrow. His tone made it clear my status was too lowly, that I wasn't even worth His Highness coming to dismiss me personally. Suppressing all that pain, I just slowly nodded and agreed to leave. Lord Sterling seemed surprised that I'd be so straightforward. He hesitated for a moment. I was stunned for a moment. Then he kindly reminded me not to mention anything about the estate to anyone. He said I should change my name, move somewhere else, and start a new life. That way, I wouldn't make things difficult for His Highness. I pressed him, why does Lady Victoria want me dead? He was silent for a while, then only said one thing.
It's not the man who's at fault, but the treasure he holds.
After leaving the Duke's estate, I bought a horse cart. I drove that horse cart all the way south, just wanting to get far away from the Northlands. I wanted to cut all connection with Julian from then on, but fate just loves to play tricks on people. Just 1 month after leaving the Northlands, I found out I was pregnant. Looking at the medicine in my hand, I hesitated for a long time. In the end, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. This child was Julian's, but it was also mine. I just couldn't bear to give him up. After 9 months of pregnancy, I gave birth to a baby boy. I named him Leo. To avoid drawing attention, I changed my name. I took on the identity of a widow, Nora, and came to a small village in the south. I fell back on my old trade of growing and selling flowers to raise Leo all by myself. During that time, I also adopted an orphan girl, Lily. Leo was a bright and clever kid from the start. He had great ambitions, and buried himself in his books day and night. Looking at him, my heart was filled with both pride and worry. 10 years of studying tirelessly. And Leo finally made us all proud. He scored first in the royal exams, becoming the youngest top scholar in Eldoria's history. We were absolutely thrilled for him, when terrible news suddenly came from the royal capital. The new top scholar, Leo, defied the royal marriage decree. The king had him thrown into death row. My heart dropped. I immediately took Lily with me and traveled day and night to the capital. For a commoner like me, getting an audience with the king was next to impossible. I knocked on every door I could find, but they all slammed shut. With no other options left, I could only choose to ring the bell of justice. After enduring the flogging, I was finally able to see the king. But when I looked up at the king on the royal throne, I was so terrified, I instantly dropped my gaze. That face, it was unmistakably Julian, the Duke from 15 years ago. Julian, now 30, was far more imposing than the young prince I remembered. He radiated an intimidating, innate aura, making it hard for me to breathe. He ordered me to look up. His gaze fixed directly on me. He said flatly,
15 years. I thought you were already dead.
I panicked, insisting he had the wrong person. But he slowly came down the jade steps, and said, every word deliberate.
Even if you were turned to ash, I'd recognize you in an instant.
I knew there was no point hiding it anymore. So I had to lay my cards on the table, to defend my son Leo. I told him Leo defied the royal marriage decree because he was already promised to someone, and refused to be a heartless traitor who'd abandon his wife and child. But Julian veered off course. He sneered, demanding,
why did you abandon me then? I treated you well back then, Clara.
He gritted his teeth as he said my real name, his voice full of anger and resentment. I took a deep breath and fearlessly met Julian's furious gaze. I shot back, Your Majesty, it was you who ordered Lord Sterling to send me away from the Duke's estate. How can you accuse me of abandoning you? He leaned in, gripped my chin, and snapped.
It was Lord Sterling who sent you away on the Empress Dowager's orders.
Acting on his own. It wasn't my decree. He even claimed that when his men found me back then, I lied to his guards, saying I'd only return to the Northlands if he came for me himself, while secretly plotting my escape. I guiltily looked away. Back then, I really didn't want to go back to be his mistress, so I seized the chance to run away. The Grand Hall was plunged into a dead silence. I knew if this stalemate continued, his anger would only grow stronger. I might even be thrown into the dungeon. I had no choice but to lower myself and beg him to spare my son. Julian's fingers gripping my chin tightened slightly. His tone was cold and menacing as he demanded why I'd betrayed him.
You took up with another man, and even had that bastard Leo.
I was truly out of options. I could only grit my teeth and fake a feint to win some sympathy. But the moment I closed my eyes, I truly couldn't hold on anymore. My whole body felt weak and burning hot. I completely lost consciousness. Half conscious, I felt him scoop me up into his arms. I also heard him order Thomas to fetch the royal physician. He whispered so many things in my ear. But I only made out one sentence.
If you dare, I'll have Leo buried alive with you.
That jolted me wide awake. I grabbed onto his sleeve. Tears flooded my eyes. I begged him again to spare Leo, telling him that Leo really couldn't marry the princess. Julian was seated by the woods. His eyes were fixed on me, intense. After a long moment, he finally spoke.
I could let Leo live. It depends on what you do for me.
That aggressive look in his eyes, I knew it all too well. But what he was asking, I simply couldn't agree to. Gritting my teeth against the pain, I pushed myself up to sit straight. I wiped the tears from my eyes. I told him I am sworn to my late husband. The village chief reported to the authorities for me. They even built a chastity arch in my honor. I can never remarry. I thought this shackle of virtue would hold him back. But he just looked back at me, calm as ever. His fingers were slowly rubbing the jade ring on his thumb. Then he said, plain as day.
The name on that arch is Nora, not Clara. So it means nothing.
He added that,
even if my real name was carved on it, it'd mean nothing to him.
My eyes widened in shock. For a moment, I was at a loss for words. In the face of royal power, those so-called symbols of chastity are just fragile, worthless ornaments. After Julian left, Daisy came in with a tray, her eyes red and teary. She kept calling me, my lady, saying she just knew I'd come back. I was utterly bewildered. Daisy is the same age as me. According to the rules, when palace maids turn 25, they can leave the palace and get married. Why is she still in the palace? Daisy set the tray down and helped me sit up to drink some porridge. She said she'd tell me everything after I ate, about all these years. By the candlelight, Daisy told me, her voice choked, that on the very day I left, Julian sent his shadow guards to search for me everywhere, while also mobilizing troops to fight at the border. He fought with brutal ferocity in that battle, crushing the barbarians so utterly they vanished from the steppes. With this incredible feat, after returning to the capital, he took over the court when the king fell gravely ill. After the king passed away, he rightfully took the throne. After Daisy went back to the capital with his right-hand man, he gave her a royal arranged marriage. But she was ordered to stay and work at the palace, just waiting for my return. When Daisy told me Julian had a palace full of concubines, that little flicker of warmth inside me vanished into thin air. I couldn't help but scoff. With so many concubines at his beck and call, he still remembers me. How thoughtful of him. Daisy's face fell a little. She stammered and whispered to me that the king had never laid a hand on any of those concubines. Then she leaned in close and whispered mysteriously in my ear, after you left, the king became impotent. I was filled with doubt. If he was impotent, then where did Princess Chengel come from? Daisy explained. The princess was the daughter of Prince Jean. When she was 1 month old, the Empress Dowager had her brought to the palace and adopted by the king. I was half convinced. Back in the Northlands, there were already rumors that Julian was impotent. I never thought he'd still be like that 15 years later. When he came to the Phoenix Hall, I couldn't resist testing him myself. The result was a furious roar from him and a sharp rap on my head. Word got out fast that the king kept the top scholar's mother inside the inner palace, and it spread like wildfire through the court. Not a single official dared to say a word. Only Leo, who had just been released, during the morning court session, stood before all the officials and confronted Julian head-on.
He asked why the king kept his mother, Madame Nora, in the inner palace. He even put her in the Phoenix Palace, which is reserved only for the Empress. He called it a blatant breach of protocol.
Julian looked at him with a heavy gaze. His tone was icy as he said,
When did my family affairs become any of your business?
But Leo showed no fear. He stepped forward and bowed.
He accused the king of ignoring all protocol and decency by keeping his mother in the inner palace. He asked if the king wasn't afraid of becoming a public laughingstock.
Every word he spoke was a challenge, practically flirting with death. Julian was so angry he instantly stood up. He roared,
How dare you?
The king's wrath was terrifying. Julian immediately ordered that Leo be thrown back onto death row. I had just arrived at the study door when I heard from inside the sound of shattering porcelain. It was followed by Julian's furious voice.
Take Leo to the city gates and execute him publicly.
I was so terrified my legs nearly gave out. I hiked up my skirts and rushed into the study. I grabbed Thomas to stop him from delivering the decree. In my panic, the words just tumbled out. He's your own flesh and blood. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cub. You can't execute him. Julian's brow knitted even tighter. My heart was pounding, terrified he wouldn't believe me, so I rushed to explain everything. Send someone to Lotus Town to check. 14 years ago, see if there was a pregnant woman named He who gave birth to a baby boy there, or question the midwife, Granny Lai, who delivered my baby. I also told him that, to avoid the gossip back then, and fearing he'd find me and take the child someday, I posed as a widow. I also shaved half a year off Leo's age. A deathly silence fell over the study. Thomas ducked his head. He didn't dare to make a sound. Julian just stared at me, hard, for what felt like forever. He was barely holding back his rage. He finally gritted through his teeth.
How splendid.
Then he ordered Thomas to verify my story. I was sure he still meant to execute Leo. I completely lost it. I snatched the decree from Thomas's hands. Through tears, I said if he was going to kill Leo, he'd have to kill me too. But when I unrolled it and looked, I froze. It stated that General Zhang Qian had been negligent in his duties. He had repeatedly failed to correct his behavior. As a result, he was sentenced to death. It had nothing to do with Leo.
It's not Leo.
I was dumbfounded. My face flushed with embarrassment. Julian took one look at me. His anger just melted away. He waved a hand. He dismissed Thomas and the others, saying we'd deal with Zhang Qian later. Then I noticed. Besides Thomas in the royal study, there was Penelope kneeling on the floor, along with her father, Lord Sterling. Penelope looked almost unchanged. Hearing Julian's words, she and Lord Sterling were both shocked and overjoyed. They immediately bowed to thank him. As Penelope rose, our eyes met. She quickly averted her gaze. Trying to stay calm, she helped Lord Sterling up. Though Lord Sterling's temples were now gray, his posture remained straight and strong. He glanced up at me. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he said nothing. Only a hint of guilt lingered in his eyes. To be honest, I never blamed him. Back then, he was caught between the Queen Mother and Julian. Torn between the two. Choosing to send me away was his only option. After they left, I tried to sneak out as well. But Julian grabbed me by the neck. He said in a low voice that we weren't finished settling our score. I knew I couldn't fight him head-on. So I pleaded softly, asking him to release Leo, so the three of us could sit down and talk. In the Phoenix Hall, Julian and Leo sat across from each other, just staring each other down. You could see in their eyes not a hint of the joy a father and son should have reuniting. Just pure disdain. Watching them at this impasse, I couldn't help but nudge Leo, teasing him about how he always begged me for a dad. Now that he's here, he gets all awkward. Leo looked at me. He looked a bit embarrassed. Said he never imagined his dad would be the king. I laughed and tried to cheer him up. Having a royal dad is great. No one would dare take his head so easily now. I even mentioned that when he went to the capital for his exams, I was so worried that he'd accidentally offend some noble and get himself killed. Leo shot back defiantly.
He said I was underestimating him.
I gave his head a light tap. I told him not to talk back. I mean, he's already managed to offend the biggest noble there is. Julian said solemnly.
You have a terrible habit of being outspoken. It's just like your mother's.
I let out an awkward laugh. I quickly agreed with Julian. I quickly chimed in with Julian, saying we mother and son are both outspoken, and that he's the most refined and virtuous one. He is a man of high morals. But the moment I said that, the moment the words left my mouth, his face darkened even more. He shot me an unfriendly look.
But he waved his hand to cut me off. He ordered us, mother and son,
to copy the palace rules 10 times, word for word, so we wouldn't embarrass him in the future. The moment I heard copy the palace rules, my face immediately fell. I remembered when Mrs. Hudson rapped my knuckles, and it still sent a shiver down my spine. I hurriedly begged him, saying I could never learn all those rules. At most, I'd just talk less in the future. But Julian flatly refused. Leo just shrugged indifferently. For him, copying the palace rules was a piece of cake. Looking at this father and son, I felt both angry and helpless. The top scholar was now the king's own son. And I, the top scholar's mother, was about to be crowned as queen. This news shocked all the court officials, causing quite an uproar. It was only while copying the rules that I learned the Phoenix Roost Palace I was living in had always been reserved for the queen. I couldn't help but feel a wave of panic. The queen mother's away at the mountain temple praying. If she finds out Julian wants to make me queen, she's coming for me the moment she gets back. She never did like me. What's more, Julian's going against every single minister just to crown me. That's gonna piss off the whole court, drive a wedge between the king and his men, destabilize the whole kingdom. Plus, if I'm queen, Leo's position is just asking for more trouble. Whether he can be crown prince, the court's gonna have serious doubts. Julian doesn't have any kids of his own. This isn't just about an heir, it's about the throne itself. The more I think about it, the more reckless Julian's plan seems. That night, the moment Julian got back to the Phoenix Palace, I rushed to meet him. I pulled him aside and tried to talk sense into him, begging him to think about the bigger picture. I asked him not to make me queen, just give me some lower title, like a concubine or something. His expression darkened. He asked if I was trying to leave him. I quickly said that wasn't it. I was just worried about the court. He scooped me up and pulled me close. Then he gave my forehead a flick. He sounded a bit frustrated. I pressed against his chest. telling him to stop acting like he used to, always flicking my forehead like that. He sighed, and brought up the past. If he hadn't had to go to war against the barbarians, we wouldn't have missed out on so many years. He blamed me for not trusting him back then, for falling for Lord Sterling in his daughter's words. I couldn't help but argue back, saying I was just scared of his mother. I looked up at him and pressed him on why Lady Victoria wanted to kill me back then. After a long silence, he told me that his mother was afraid he'd break free from her control because of me. The day before the coronation,
Julian took me to a garden.
It was filled with peach trees. A sea of peach blossoms in radiant bloom. A gentle breeze blew, petals falling like a shower of pink rain. I was completely mesmerized. Julian wrapped his arms around me from behind and softly asked if I liked it. I turned around with a smile and kissed him on the lips. I whispered that I adored it. And in that moment, all the past grievances and entanglements seemed washed away in that shower of peach blossoms, leaving nothing but a heart full of warmth and joy.